What? The problem we're trying to solve is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. And then there's us.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. Hey, if you haven't already, just click the follow button so you don't miss an episode. Welcome. Today on the show, it is my longtime friend and former coworker, Bill Barker. He's a great investment analyst for a bunch of reasons. High up on the list are the fact that he's got an analytical mind. He is as cool under fire as anyone I've ever worked with. And as you will hear in this conversation, he was well on his way to a successful career in a completely different profession. We talked about that. We talked about different types of splurging, and we had a few laughs. So I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. Let's get into it with Bill Barker. So you grew up in the suburbs of Philly, and you have siblings. Remind me how many siblings you have?
Three.
And where do you fall in the pecking order?
Third.
Okay. And
are you going to diagnose me now as a third child? Is that why you need this information?
Well, as the youngest child in my family, I'm not going to diagnose you. I'm just going to silently judge you, as all youngest children do, as all oldest children do, as all middle children do. Do you have an early memory of money, whether it's physical money or something being talked about or anything like that?
I do remember, well, I was the one who was most interested in collecting coins, and that was an early hobby. And my grandmother had what seemed to me to be an extravagant coin collection. She had a lot of Indian head pennies and things from the early 1900s and late 1890s, 1880s, a few. So I thought that those were amazing. Now, none of them were in very good condition, so they're not worth much of anything. But in terms of a kid who was attracted to the whole thing, I expressed the most interest, and therefore I think I got all or most of her coin collection.
I'm thinking now to my own childhood, and I think it was with coins that I learned the whole idea that, well, this is a dime, but because it's so old and it has a different marking on it, it's actually worth more than 10 cents. The idea that this coin, which is nominally a nickel, is actually worth more than a nickel, and that blew my little mind.
Yeah, no, I was definitely interested in something that was a nickel being worth, 30 cents or something, but to a coin collector seemed like a vast improvement. And those kinds of coins don't appreciate in value much at all. I mean, it's only the very well-kept, top-of-the-line conditioned coins that are now worth much of anything. And I think they've held up better than stamps in terms of collectability, but they're not what you wanted to be putting all of your collecting money into back in the 60s or 70s.
Do you remember your parents talking about money at all? Was it discussed in the home? Because we grew up at a time where it is rare that it was.
You're telling me it was legal for parents to discuss money with their children where you lived or in some part of society?
I think
tell me about it.
In all of the United States, it was legal. It just wasn't practiced.
If you say so. But you couldn't prove it by my family. No, it was not talked about very much. I mean, we had questions about why can't we buy this thing or that thing, and the answer was money. And I definitely came from parents, particularly my mother, who was the one who did all of the budgeting and spending and writing of checks and determining how we would spend our money. Dad went out and earned it, and then she controlled, I think, how it was distributed. And she came from, the Depression, and it was a very, very influenced depiction of how to spend and take care of your money.
What was the first job you had when you were a teenager?
Before that, I had a paper route when I was maybe, 10, 11, 12, 13, something like that. Several years, I can't remember how many, but that was the first job. And I guess before that,
did you like
shoveling snow? Yeah. Well, it was money. It was I got to go on my bike and go around the neighborhood, and I didn't like it when it was raining, and I had to do it. I didn't do it every day. It was just a once a week local paper, which at some point became twice a week, and that was a failed experiment. Went back to once a week, but that was certainly a major increase in the amount of money that I had to spend having a little job like that.
You went to Yale.
If you say so, yeah.
Degree in political science.
Political philosophy, technically, but yeah.
Did you major in political philosophy for the purpose of going into something related to politics, or was it, I'm interested in this, I'll figure out a career later?
I was an African studies major up through the end of junior year. And somewhere toward the end of junior year, I determined that I didn't like the idea of moving to Africa or something and spending my life there as much as I had maybe when I was a sophomore. So it was a little evolution in my education. Certainly an interesting field to study. And I think I just looked at the credits that I had at the end of junior year and said, if I had to pick another major, what do I have enough of to complete a completely different major before the end of senior year? And it was a combination of the political science and the philosophy credits that I had that were able to be combined into the political philosophy.
What did you do right after you graduated from Yale?
I recovered from a knee injury immediately afterwards. That's what I spent the first couple weeks of my graduate life doing. I'm
tempted to ask about the knee injury, but I'm just going to blow right by that. Let me be more specific. I'm assuming you weren't getting a paycheck for recovering from the knee surgery, or knee injury. So what were you doing for work?
It's true. Back in those days, you didn't get paid to recover from knee. Tell that to the kids today.
I know.
Exactly. Though I recovered from that, and I had gone to Yale, as you mentioned, and had no more plan of what to do with life than, whatever it is that they just offer you for having graduated from Yale, which turns out to be nothing. No one actually just comes up and says, you graduated from college? Can we hire you? So I eventually got a paralegal job, and I was applying to law school. So it was the year between graduating from college and beginning law school. I was a paralegal.
So you go to University of Virginia for law school. Do you go in with the intention of practicing law? Because there are people who go to law school just to have something to fall back upon. And I'm assuming you had more than a little interest in a legal career.
I had interest in the study of justice, having been a political philosophy major for all of 1 year, but having studied many courses that were related to it throughout college, I thought that was maybe what law school was going to be, the study of justice. And there was a little tiny bit of that in law school, but not as much as I had thought there might be. So I went there with more direction than just, I don't know what to do, I'll go to law school, which is common. I would say I was about half step more directed than that, and probably considered going into prosecution as the thing that I would have expected to do when I started.
I was going to say, because we've known each other a long time, and I never really did the math on this until I was preparing for this conversation. You're in the legal profession for 7 years after you graduate from law school. You're working at a firm in D.C. You're back in Philadelphia, I think in the solicitor's office, representing the city in legal matters. And at some point along the way, I'm assuming investing comes into your life, because it's a pretty hard right turn to go from, you didn't just dabble in the legal industry. You're there for 7 years. You're actually starting to make a career. And then you go to work for the Motley Fool. And I'm curious, where along the way in your legal profession does investing come into your life in a meaningful way?
I think it came into my life in a meaningful way, really, when I found the Motley Fool site, but I had dabbled in it during maybe the first 4 years of that 7 years. And so I was working with the city of Philadelphia city solicitor's office doing commercial litigation. And this new internet thing popped up, and AOL would force the Motley Fool icon upon you on their home screen pretty aggressively, certainly to the limited degree that the algorithms were perfected back then. I think having done anything searching for investing on AOL, that was put in front of me. And I knew for a long time, not immediately when I started with a law firm, but didn't take years to think, you know what, I think I'm going to want to do something else. No, I spent a lot of time on the message boards, and I got a certain level of, acknowledgement from the posts I did there, and was approached by some of the people to sort of write some things on the side for the Motley Fool, and had expressed interest in learning more about working for the company. And so through all that, eventually there was an offer.
To what extent did you and your wife talk about money before you got married?
Less than we should have, I'm sure. I think at the time I was a lawyer and she was a teacher, and we were pretty new in our jobs and didn't do all of the math on what would happen if one or both of us changed anything about that. And we didn't have kids. And so I think that we had enough money for what we were doing at the time, and more or less thought that that would continue to be the case. And, once you have kids, some things change.
Right.
I think if we had never had kids, then the not having talked about money would have been less of a
problem.
There would have been fewer surprises in a lot of ways than once you add that variable into the mix.
But when you say, looking back on it, we should have talked about it more, is that a function of simply just being the age you are, looking back and thinking, oh, life was less complicated, maybe to some level we were naive? Or do you look back and say, no, actual mistakes were made there that could have been avoided if we had talked about money more? Because I find when I talk to people, it's really more the former. It's more sort of like, we didn't talk about it that much. Maybe we should have more, but it worked out.
A little of both. I mean, I think we didn't need to talk about money at the time. I think that we, like everybody, if we could have predicted what all of our jobs would have been and when we would have wanted to get out of jobs, and had that knowledge, and at the time, when you're that young and you haven't decided everything, the conversation might be, well, that sounds great. Do whatever makes you happy. Like, you don't even know enough to say, do whatever makes you happy. I'm sure that'll work out. That introduces complications too.
Coming up, we've got the speed round, but first, quick shout out to Dizzy Pig. We're almost at the official start of summer, so I gotta ask, what is the state of your grill game? If you've been using the same recipes you've been using for years, maybe, just maybe, it's time to spice things up, literally. Doesn't matter if it's chicken, beef, pork, seafood, or vegetables, Dizzy Pig has got the rubs and spice combos to impress your guests and make your taste buds happy. This is an artisan operation, people. At Dizzy Pig, they grind whole spices just before they bottle them. We're talking true craft products. They're made in small batches, bottled by hand. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Go to dizzypigbbq.com, use the promo code MONEY, and get 10% off your first purchase. Click the link in the show notes or go to dizzypigbbq.com. 10% off when you use the promo code MONEY. All right, let's get back to Bill. What is a thing that you have bought that makes you happy?
I would say that probably the thing that I've spent the most money on and has made me the most happy for the most part is the dogs. And I had no idea how much money I would be spending on the dogs. But they do bring some of us great happiness, but also the money. The money that's something you really need to talk about with your dog really early on. Like, how much are you going to cost me?
Forget your spouse, forget your partner, talk to the pets.
Talk to the dog about I want to get a budget sorted out here, and you are not to overspend this budget.
That's just how this is going to go. Look, I'll take care of the shelter, I'll take care of the food, but the extracurricular expenses, buddy, you got to rein those in.
Yeah. We're not going to have the sort of surprises that you may have in mind.
Have you ever made a purchase that you regret at any point in your life, and sometimes you still think about it?
Well, I mean, thanks for bringing it up. I hadn't thought about this in a long time. I had to sit and think about this. There were a couple of early gym memberships which were completely, unused or next to unused, one of which I think I was going to utilize by riding my bike 10 miles to get. That was going to be the first part of my workout, was riding 10 miles to get there and then working out and then riding home.
So
that was a bad plan.
You got a membership at a gym 10 miles from your house.
Yeah. I had access to a car, but I had more access to a bike. And the day when I signed up for that, I think I was more ambitious than I actually turned out to be, both in getting there and utilizing it ever. And that was not the only time. I got another gym membership that was much closer to where I lived and worked and used it about as much. And in those days, I don't know what the deal is now with gym memberships. The strong arm tactics of getting you to sign up for 1 year, 2 year, whatever membership, they were pretty tough about that. And it was also much easier to just get out of paying for bills back then, I thought. Like, they had to work much harder to get your money. You had to write a check and put it in the mail and all that. So it was really easy to stop paying and then just say, I don't want to be a member of this gym that I never use anymore. Why don't you stop billing me for this?
I'll make you a deal. What is the last thing you splurged on for yourself? Not for the family, not for the dogs, just for yourself.
I think probably the last successful thing that I splurged on was a car, which I got back in December. We needed a car. It wasn't like I got a car that we didn't need to just look at it, but I didn't need to get a new car. Could have got a used car. So I think that was a little bit of splurge. But a more interesting one was I put a little bid in today on a World War II era comic book that I've been having my eye on by a relatively in-demand artist, or the cover is by the artist Alex Schoenberg. And it's got the usual just total chaos of battle, and Hitler is being pursued by one of the superheroes, and it looks very, very scared, and it's great fun to look at.
So this is on eBay or some other auction site?
On an auction site, yeah.
And this is live right now as you and I are talking?
It is, yeah.
When does the auction close?
My bid is not going to be enough. I can show you a picture of it.
This is an audio podcast, so that might work for me, but less so for the audience.
Yeah, but you'll be able to describe something about it. It is audio, but you're a master of painting images with words. You're sort of an expert in that.
That really is, as you described, that is a chaotic cover of a Marvel comic. And yeah, Hitler's looking...
He's in trouble.
He's in trouble.
As he should be.
As he should be. As ultimately he was.
And Goebbels and Goering are also in there, also in a lot of trouble. I don't know how they're going to get out of that one.
So this actually explained something that I was going to ask, because when I asked you, what's the last thing you splurged on for yourself, you used the adjective successful. And as you were talking about the car, I was thinking to myself, well, what's an unsuccessful splurge? And you just explained. It's an auction that you don't win.
It's an auction, and I don't think that I am going to. I've put a bid in, and I do not expect to be the winning bid unless I go much higher.
So you have a hard limit, because this is something Bob Pisani and I talked about where the purchase that he regretted was he's a big music fan. He got caught up in the emotion of bidding for a concert poster and went way above his self-imposed limit.
Did he throw some numbers out there, or was it just
I believe I would have to go back and listen to the episode. I believe the limit he had set for himself was $500, and I believe his winning bid was $3,500. So 7x the hard limit, and he was laughing and shaking his head as he shared the story.
It really, the way you and he describe it, doesn't sound like a hard limit. Right. It sounds like a very soft limit.
So whatever limit you've set for this comic book, you're not going 7x above that.
No. I mean, someday I will get one of these comics that has this chaotic World War II superhero fighting the villains kind of thing going, but it's probably not going to be this one.
You know what's coming up in a few weeks? Father's Day. Maybe
maybe
drop that hint to the family. What is one thing about money that you wish you knew earlier in life?
We discussed this before the show, that I can't come up with something, and I'm going to look to you for guidance. And I know that you won't give me your own, but you must have heard some good ones. The fact is that looking back on it, while I can say that I've made many mistakes with money, most of them were not, despite not knowing how to treat money. I was pretty, compared to the general populace, pretty financially literate early on in terms of saving for retirement with my first job and not having credit card debt and things like that. So I didn't make any of those kinds of mistakes, but I'm sure that I'm forgetting things that I wish I had known.
Well, and I've had this feeling about my own investing life, and maybe some percentage of this is how you feel as well, which is I look back on when I started investing, and it was, I think I was, probably 30 when I started investing in the stock market, like intentionally investing in the stock market. And that's earlier than a lot of people. There are a lot of people who never invest in the stock market. And so I look back on that, and I think simultaneously, I should have started that sooner. But also, part of me feels like it would be gauche to complain or beat myself up about that, because a lot of people start later, and a lot of people never start at all. What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
I'm glad you asked.
Less people get the impression that you spend every waking hour bidding on rare comic books.
They would have a much better, more accurate impression of me based on that than on the way I just answered it. No, I'm glad you asked, because looking at the answer, which you supplied before the start of the show.
I didn't supply the answer, just a question.
No, but the answer is implied that you should be giving something to charity or to organizations, or to, and I do, but not nearly enough. And I think it was being reminded in that manner that I could easily give more than I have been giving. And so, yeah, I actually started something today in response to this question of a monthly gift to something that will contribute to curing cancer. So you've saved some lives today.
Or at least help fund some research.
Help fund some research. No, I the sort of thing that is easiest, I suppose, for me to give, I've donated cars and some other things at times to anything that puts children and cancer in the same sentence.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV series that has money as a through line? Well,
probably many, but I wanted to talk about one because I think it's worth talking about, and that's the Hudsucker Proxy.
Holy cow, what a good movie.
See, I did it because I knew we were going to be able to do something with it. It's like, what movie is not about money in some way? There's like The Sting might be like my favorite movie that is definitely about money, but it's too easy. The Hudsucker Proxy is something that we can talk about.
Yes, absolutely. We can't go on at great length. I mean, we could, and I could just edit it down. But for those unfamiliar, The Hudsucker Proxy, a movie that comes out in the late 90s, a Coen Brothers comedy with Tim Robbins and Paul Newman. And Tim Robbins is the wide-eyed young college graduate who just comes to town, gets a job in the mailroom of Hudsucker Industries, and things happen. Paul Newman is...
he's the bad guy.
He's the bad guy. He's not the chairman of the board of Hudsucker Industries, but he's sort of pulling the strings and basically pulls the strings to get this young guy to be the new CEO of Hudsucker Industries. And wacky hijinks ensue. And Jennifer Jason Leigh does a phenomenal job as the brilliant caricature of the fast-talking newspaper reporter. This is set in the 40s, the 50s? In the 50s. It's set in the 50s.
Yeah. And I think that the introductory movie clip for this episode might be the Hudsucker Proxy. I have one to suggest to you if you're looking for that.
That might be in a future episode.
You've already got one for this episode. I can't get you to re-edit.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But is that just your favorite movie with money as a through line just because of the enjoyment you get from watching it? Or are there financial lessons you draw from it? I mean, it's a pretty good depiction of stock manipulation. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were to say, like, what did you learn the most about money from watching? It wouldn't be that, because I'm not actually involved in manipulating stocks that often. But I would know how to do it having watched the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's just a great, funny movie, too little known, from the Coen brothers oeuvre.
The last thing is a penny for your thoughts. And this is something you can share with the audience that can be about money, but doesn't have to be about money. It's just any type of advice or life wisdom that you've picked up in your many decades on this planet that you can share with people.
Here's one, which I've given to you, and you, I think, thanked me for, which is just something to watch. And that is Derek Delgadio's In and of Itself on Hulu.
Yes.
It's not about money.
It's not about money. And I remember you recommending that I watch this, and I asked you, what is it? And you basically said, I'm not going to tell you because I can't really describe it, and you should just watch it. It's a one-man show. And yeah, that's...
I think a lot of the best things that you can advise somebody to do or to watch are things that you can't describe. You watch this movie. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. Just sit there, turn your phone off, and watch it. And those, to me, are sort of the best movies. I'm not sure that this lesson goes any further in life. Maybe we can tease this out. But, it's like, go and watch Miller's Crossing. Turn your phone off. Don't do anything. Just watch it. Or movies of that where you have to pay attention. And in and of itself is a very different thing. But it's don't get interrupted while you're watching it. Anything that you should do without any interruption, which is harder and harder to do nowadays, is most worth doing.
I think the broader lesson might be about expectations and having appropriate expectations going into something. Because certainly, to stick with the movie example, there are plenty of movies that are big summer blockbusters, and you go in with big expectations, and sometimes those movies don't meet the expectations. And instead, if it's just watch this thing. I'm not going to tell you about it. I really think you're going to enjoy it. And just taking that leap of faith when someone makes that recommendation.
Well, we can bring this into money then, can't we? I mean, there are those who will say, and have said in pithier words, all of unhappiness in life is unmet expectations. And you can apply that to money pretty easily. If your expectations are to have some amount of money that you don't then have, you can miss out on a lot of life waiting for it to arrive.
There you go. This show is not sponsored by Hulu, but, if you're a Hulu subscriber, check out the one-man show that Bill mentioned. It's called In and of Itself. It's worth your time. And if you want to find more insights from Bill Barker, look him up online at fool.com. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.